All right, we're back again. The Birth of Tragedy by Friedrich Nietzsche, Part 2. I'm on page 30. Actually, the last video was all introduction. We shall have gained much for the science of aesthetics when once we have perceived not only by logical inference, but by the immediate certainty of intuition that the continuous development of art is bound up with the duplexity of Apollonian and Dionysian, in like manner as procreation is dependent on the duality of the sexes, involving perpetual conflicts with only periodically intervening reconciliations. These names we borrow from the Greeks, who disclose to the intelligent observer the profound mysteries of their view of art, not indeed in concepts, but in the impressively clear figures of their world of deities. It is in connection with Apollo and Dionysus, the two art deities of the Greeks, that we learn that there existed in the Grecian world a wide antithesis in origin and aims between the art of the shaper, the Apollo, and the non-plastic art of music, that of Dionysus. Both these heterogeneous tendencies run parallel to each other, for the most part openly at variance, and continually inciting each other to new and more powerful bursts, to perpetuate in them the strife of this antithesis, which is but seemingly bridged over by the mutual term art, till at last, by a metaphysical miracle of the Hellenic will, they appeared paired with each other, and through this pairing eventually generate the equally Dionysian and Apollonian artwork of Attic tragedy. In order to bring these two tendencies within closer range, let us conceive them first of all as the separate art worlds of dreamland and drunkenness, between which physiological phenomena contrast may be observed analogous to that existing between Apollo and Dionysus. In dreams, according to the conception of Lucretius, the glorious divine figures first appeared to the souls of men. In dreams, the great shaper beheld the charming corporal structure of superhuman beings, and the Hellenic poet, if consulted on the mysteries of poetic inspiration, would likewise have suggested dreams and would have offered an explanation resembling that of Hans Sachs in the Mitre Singers. My friend, just this is poet's task, his dream to read and to unmask. Trust me, illusion's truth, thrice sealed in dream, to man will be revealed. All verse craft and poetization is but sooth dream interpretation. The beauteous appearance of the dream worlds, in the production of which every man is a perfect artist, is the presupposition of all plastic art, and in fact, we shall see, of an important half of poetry also. We take delight in the immediate apprehension of form. All forms speak to us. There is nothing indifferent, nothing superfluous, but together with the highest life of this dream reality, we also have glimmering through it the sensation of its appearance, such at least is my experience, as to the frequency, normality of which I could deduce many proofs, as also saying of the poets, indeed the man of philosophical turn has a foreboding that underneath this reality in which we live, we have our being, another and altogether different reality lies concealed, and that therefore it is also an appearance, and Schopenhauer actually designates the gift of occasionally regarding men and things as mere phantoms in dream pictures as the criterion of physical ability. According The man susceptible to art stands in the same relation to the reality of dreams as the philosopher to the reality of existence. He is a close and willing observer, for from these pictures he reads the meaning of life, and by these processes he trains himself for life. And it is perhaps not the agreeable and friendly pictures that he realizes in himself with such perfect understanding, the earnest, the troubled, the dreary, the gloomy, the sudden checks, the tricks of fortune, the uneasy presentiments, in short, the whole divine comedy of life, and the inferno also pass before him, not merely like pictures on the wall, for he too lives and suffers in these scenes, and yet not without that fleeting sensation of appearance. And perhaps many a one will, like myself, recollect having sometimes called out cheeringly, and not without success, amid the dangers and terrors of dream life, "It is a dream. I will dream on." I have likewise been told of persons capable of continuing the causality of one and the same dream for 3 and even more successive nights, all of which facts clearly testify that our innermost being, the common substratum of all of us, experiences our dreams with deep joy and cheerful acquiescence. This cheerful acquiescence in the dream experience has likewise been embodied by the Greeks in their Apollo, for Apollo, as the god of all shaping energies, is also the soothsaying god. He who, as the etymology of the name indicates, is the shining one, the deity of light, also rules over the fair appearance of the inner world of fantasies, the higher truth, the perfection of these states in contrast to the only partially intelligible everyday world, the deep consciousness of nature, healing and helping in sleep and dream, is at the same time the symbolic analog of the faculty of soothsaying and in general of the arts, through which life is made possible and worth living, but also that delicate line which the dream picture must not overstep, lest it act pathologically, in which case appearance, being pure and simple, would impose upon us, must not be wanting in the picture of Apollo, that measured limitation, that freedom from the wilder emotions, that philosophical calmness of the sculptor god. His eye must be sun-like according to his origin. Even when it is angry and looks displeased, the sacredness of his beauty appearance is still there. And so we might apply to Apollo, in an eccentric sense, what Schopenhauer says of man wrapped in the veil of Maya, Weltall's Willy and Volstalum, just as in a stormy sea, unbounded in every direction, rising and falling with howling mountainous waves, a sailor sits in a boat and trusts in his frail bark, so in the midst of a world of sorrows, the individual sits quietly, supported by and trusting in the principle of individuals. And indeed, we might say of Apollo, that the unshaken faith in this principle and the quiet sitting of man wrapped therein have received their sublimest expression, and we might even designate Apollo as the glorious divine image of the principle of individuals, from out of the gesture and looks of which all the joy and wisdom of appearance, together with its beauty, speaks to us. In the same work, Schopenhauer has described to us the stupendous awe which seized upon man, when of sudden he is at loss to account for the cognitive forms of phenomenon. In that principle of reason, in some one of its manifestations, seems to admit of an exception. Add to this awe the blissful ecstasy which rises from the world and will as idea, innermost depths of man, of nature, at this same collapse of the principal individual, and we shall gain an insight into the being of Dionysus, which is brought within closest ken perhaps by the analogy of drunkenness. It is either under the influence of the narcotic draught, of which the hymns of all primitive men and peoples tell us, by the powerful approach of spring, penetrating all nature with joy, that these Dionysian emotions awake, in the augmentation of which the subjective vanishes to complete self-forgetfulness. So also in the German Middle Ages, singing and dancing crowds, ever increasing in number, were borne from place to place under this same Dionysian power. In these St. John's and St. Vitus dancers we again perceive the Bacchic choruses of the Greek, with their previous history in Asia Minor as far back as Babylon and the orgiastic Sicily. There are some who, from a lack of experience or obtuseness, will turn away from such phenomena as folk diseases with a smile of contempt or pity prompted by the consciousness of their own health. Of course, the poor wretches do not divine what a cadaverous-looking and ghastly aspect this very health of theirs prevents when the glowing life of the Dionysian revelers rushes past them. Under the charm of the Dionysian, not only is the covenant between man and man again established, but also estranged, hostile, or subjugated. Again, nature again celebrates her reconciliation with her lost son, man. Of her own accord, her proffers her gifts, and peacefully the beasts of prey approach from the desert and the rocks. The chariots of Dionysius is bedecked with flowers and garlands. Panthers and tigers pass beneath this yoke. Change Beethoven's Jubilee song into a painting, and if your imagination be equal to the occasion, when the awestruck millions sing into the dust, you will then be able to approach the Dionysian. Now is the slave a free man. Now all the stubborn, hostile barriers which necessity, caprice, or shameless fashion has set upon man and man are broken down. Now, at the evangel of cosmic harmony, each one feels himself not only united, reconciled, blended with his neighbor, but as one with him, as if the veil of Maya had been torn and were now merely fluttering in tatters before the mysterious primordial unity. In song and in dance, man exhibits himself as a member of a higher community. He has forgotten how to walk and speak, and is on the point of taking a dancing flight into the air. His gestures bespeak enchantment, even as the animals now talk, and as the earth yields milk and honey, so also something supernatural sounds forth from him. He feels himself a god. He himself now walks about enchanted and elated, even as the gods whom he saw walking about in his dreams. Man is no longer an artist. He has become a work of art. The artistic power of all nature here reveals itself in the tremors of drunkenness of the highest gratification of the primordial unity. The noblest clay, the costliest marble, namely man, is here kneaded and cut. The chisel strokes of the Dionysian world artist are accompanied with the cry of the Eleusinian mysteries. Thus far we have considered the Apollo and his antithesis, the Dionysian, as artistic powers which burst forth from nature herself, the mediation of the human artist, in which her art impulses are satisfied in the most immediate and direct way, first as the pictorial world of dreams, the perfection of which has no connection whatever with the intellectual height or artistic culture of the unit man, and again as drunken reality, which likewise does not heed the unit man. not even seeks to destroy the individual and redeem him by a mystic feeling of oneness. Anent these immediate art states of nature, every artist is either an imitator, to wit, either an Apollo, an artist in dreams, or a Dionysian, an artist in ecstasies, or finally, as for instance in Greek tragedy, an artist in both dreams and ecstasy, so we may perhaps picture him, as in his Dionysian drunkenness and mystical self-abnegation, lonesome and apart from reveling choruses, he sinks down, and now how through Apollo, dream inspiration, his own state. Schiller's Hymn to Joy and Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, his oneness with the primal source of the universe, reveals itself to him a symbolic dream picture. After these general premisings and contrastings, let us now approach the Greeks in order to learn in what degree and to what height these art impulses of nature were developed in them, whereby we shall be enabled to understand and appreciate more deeply relation of the Greek artist to his archetypes, or according to Aristotle, the imitation of nature. In spite of all the dream literature and the numerous dream anecdotes of the Greeks, we can speak only conjecturally through with a fair degree of certainty of their dreams. Considering the incredibly precise and unerring plastic power of their eyes, as also their manifest and sincere delight in colors, we can hardly refrain, to the shame of everyone born later, for assuming for their very dreams a logical causality of lines and contours, colors and groups, a sequence of scenes resembling their best reliefs, the perfection of which would certainly justify us, if a comparison were possible, in designating the dreaming Greeks as Homer, and Homer as a dreaming Greek, in a deeper sense, when modern man, in respect to his dreams, ventures to compare himself with Shakespeare. On the other hand, we should not have to speak conjecturally, if asked to disclose an immense gap which separated the Dionysian Greek from the Dionysian barbarian, from all quarters of the ancient world, to say nothing of the modern. From Rome as far as Babylon, we can prove the existence of Dionysian festivals, the type of which bears at best the same relation to the Greek festivals as the bearded satyr, who borrowed his name and attributes from the goat, does to Dionysus himself. In nearly every instance, the center of these festivals lay in extravagant sexual licentiousness, the waves of which overwhelmed all family life and its venerable traditions. The very wild beasts of nature were let loose here, including that detestable mixture of lust and cruelty, which has always seemed to me genuine witch's draught. For some time, however, it would seem that the Greeks were perfectly secure and guarded against the feverish agitations of these festivals, the knowledge of which entered Greece by all the channels of land and sea, by the figure of Apollo himself, rising here in full pride, who could not have held out the Georgian's head to a more dangerous power than this grotesquely uncouth Dionysus. It is in Doric art that this majestically rejecting attitude of Apollo perpetuated itself. This opposition became more precarious and even impossible when, from out of the deepest root of the Hellenic nature, similar impulses finally broke forth and made way for themselves. The Delphic god, by seasonably effected reconciliation, was now contended that taking the destructive arms from the hands of this powerful antagonist, the reconciliation marks the most important moment in the history of the Greek cult. Wherever we turn our eyes, we may observe the revolutions resulting from this event. It was the reconciliation of the two antagonists, with the sharp demarcation of the boundary lines to be thenceforth observed by each, and with periodic transmission of testimonials in reality. The chasm was not bridged over. But if we observe how under the pressure of this conclusion of peace, the Dionysian power manifested itself, we shall now recognize in the Dionysian orgies of the Greeks, as compared with the Babylonian Sacia and the retrogression of man to the tiger and the ape, the significance of festivals of world redemption and days of transfiguration. Not till then does nature attain her artistic jubilee. Not till then does the rupture principal individual become an artistic phenomenon. That horrible witch's draught of sensuality and cruelty was here powerless. Only the curious blending and duality in the emotions of the Dionysian revelers reminds one of it, just as medicines remind one of deadly poisons. That phenomenon, to wit, that pains beget joy, that jubilation rings painful sounds out of the breast. From the highest joy sounds the cry of horror, or the yearning wail over an irretrievable loss. In these Greek festivals, a sentimental trait, as it were, breaks forth from nature, as if she must sigh over her dismemberment into individuals. The song and pantomime of such dually minded revelers was something new and unheard of in the Homeric Grecian world, and the Dionysian music in particular excited awe and horror. If music, as it would seem, was previously known as an Apollonian art, it was, strictly speaking, only as a wave beat of rhythm, the formative power which was developed to the representation of Apollonian conditions. The music of Apollo was Doric, architronics in tones, but in merely suggested tones, such as those of Cythera, a very element which forms the essence of Dionysian music, and hence of music in general, is carefully excluded as an un-Apollonian, namely the thrilling power of the tone, the uniform stream of the melos, and the thoroughly incomparable world of harmony. In the Dionysian diatribe, man is incited to the highest exaltation of his symbolic faculties, something never before experienced before utterance. The annihilation of the veil of Maya, oneness as genius of the race of nature. The essence of nature is now to be expressed symbolically. A new world of symbols is required for once the entire symbolism of the body, not only the symbolism of the lips, face, and speech, but the whole pantomime of dancing which sets out all the members into rhythmic motion. Thereupon, other symbolic powers, those of music, in rhythmics, dynamics, and harmony, suddenly become impetuous. To comprehend this collective discharge of all the symbolic powers, a man must have already attained that height of self-abnegation, which wills to express itself symbolically through these powers. The diambric votary of Dionysus is therefore understood only by those like himself. With what astonishment must the Apollo Greek have beheld him, with an astonishment which was all the greater the more it was mingled with the shuddering suspicion that all this was in reality not so foreign to him. Like unto a veil, his Apollonian consciousness only did this Dionysian world from his view. In order to comprehend this, we must take down the artistic structure of the Apollonian culture, as it were, stone by stone, till we behold the foundation on which it rests. Hence we observe, first of all, the glorious Olympian figures of the gods, standing on the gables of the structure, whose deeds, represented in far shining reliefs, adorn its friezes. Through Apollo stands among them as an individual deity, side by side with others, and without come to priority of rank, we must not suffer this fact to mislead us. The same impulse which embodied itself in Apollo has in general given birth through this whole Olympian world, and in this sense we may regard as Apollo as the father therefore of. What was the enormous need from which proceeded such an illustrious group of the Olympian beings? Whosoever, with another religion in his heart, approaches these Olympians and seeks among them for moral elevation, even the sanctity, for incorporeal spiritualization, for sympathetic looks of love, will soon be obliged to turn his back on them, discouraged and disappointed. Here nothing rests asceticism, spirituality, or duty. Here only an exuberant, even triumphant life speaks to us, in which everything exists, is deified, whether good or bad.